Hello JMC 438, my name is Amy and I'm going to be talking to you about the case study I did on Toyota and the recall crisis. Toyota is a brand name that many people in America are familiar with, and it is a company with a long-standing history of profitability. And before the recall crisis of 2010, Toyota had a reputation for reliability and a really strong foundation that was built on customer loyalty. But oddly enough, it was this same culture of dedication and attention to quality that was the kind of the precursor for a slow response that Toyota had to some of the accusations of problems with safety, and they were slow to respond to these accusations. And part of their reasoning, though, is to study a problem thoroughly before coming to any conclusions. And so I'll get into that a little bit later. But first, a little bit about Toyota. This culture within the company was dubbed the Toyota Way. It's been the subject of a book by Liker and Ogden, which was published in 2011. The Toyota Way, when paired with the safety issues of sudden acceleration and sticky pedals, it was really kind of a recipe for the crisis that ended up happening, and it ended up resulting in Toyota recalling 10 million vehicles over the next 2 years. So because of the problems that they experienced and the slow response that they had to those issues, Toyota experienced its first operating loss in more than 50 years. So the perception was that Toyota showed a lack of concern, and the stories about the safety concerns just permeated the stories in the media. And but the cause of the gap in perception is what needs a deeper look. There are many lessons to be learned in studying the case of Toyota, because the recall crisis coupled with the slow response, it really made the situation worse than what it needed to be. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, and that was the subject of my paper, is the consequence of the slow response. So relating back to the recall crisis, though, there was obviously a mistake or a problem that needed to be investigated and eliminated when customer complaints just started pouring in about sticky pedals and sudden acceleration issues. And because eliminating mistakes is what got Toyota its start, that's what they focused on. Was they put all of their efforts, all of their time, all of their resources into investigating the problem and to eliminate it. So there's I didn't put this in the paper, but there was something that they did called the 5 whys. They would ask why 5 times before announcing anything, drawing any conclusions or anything like that. And so really, from the beginning, the problem was not that Toyota was negligent or that they failed to investigate or to take things seriously. The problem was that it was a communication problem. Not only communication with the media and the public, but it was also a lack of communication internally. So the old saying kind of goes, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. And there was a gap in communication from the Toyota Motor Sales Company in the United States and the Toyota corporate, the leadership in Japan. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. So the Toyota way is the Toyota way to resolve a problem was to thoroughly investigate before coming to any conclusions and just to make no assumptions. And in their culture, it would not be wise to go to the media with incomplete or possibly inaccurate information. The combination of how long it took to discover what was going on. I mean, it takes time, it takes patience. The problems that were going on in the investigation, coupled with the lack of sharing information with the public, it contributed to the recall crisis being perceived as much worse than what it really was in reality. There were several factors at play against Toyota in the period of time leading up to when they had to start recalling vehicles. In 2008, there was an oil price spike, and that was followed by the Great Recession. And then when these safety concerns started cropping up, it really was kind of adding on to what they had already experienced, the blows that they had taken in the recession and in the oil price spike. There came to light some serious accusations of safety and quality problems, and this was all in the United States. Over in Japan, the leadership and the engineers working were unaware of really the gravity of the accusations that had happened against Toyota. So all of these factors just played a part in the escalation of the crisis, and it led up to the eventual recall of millions of vehicles over the next several years. But it kind of came to a peak. The situation for Toyota escalated in August of 2009 when a Lexus driving on the San Diego freeway in California accelerated just completely suddenly, and the driver lost control. A passenger in the car called 911 saying that the gas pedal in the car was stuck and they could not stop. And the Lexus crashed into another vehicle, and but before the crash, the car had reached up to over 100 miles an hour, and the crash resulted in the death of 4 people. 911 call was recorded and played over and over throughout mass media and social media. It was just caught on tape, and it was there for the entire world to hear over and over again. And so in the United States, the perception of Toyota was turning towards the negative. But meanwhile in Japan, engineers were working to investigate and to try to find a solution for what was causing these problems. So as it turns out, the problem stemmed from a wear in the gas pedal assembly and from the floor mats catching and holding down the gas pedals. So the engineers in Japan perceive this as a relatively easy fix. You recall the floor mats, and it was viewed more as a customer satisfaction issue and educating the customers more than it was perceived as a safety issue. One of the great truths of PR was mentioned as about perception. It says, perception is reality, facts notwithstanding. So there was a period of about 3 months from the time the car crash happened until the San Diego County Sheriff's Department released their report. So they did a thorough investigation of the crash. The crash had happened in August. So there was a full 3 months, but from the time that the crash happened until the truth came out. And so there was all kinds of speculation in the media during those full 3 months, and no one knew the true cause of the crash, but there was a lot of speculation in the media. But in the end, the San Diego County Sheriff's Department had determined the cause of the accident was the incorrect installation of the wrong floor mat by the Lexus dealer. So the dealer had installed a floor mat that was designed for a sport utility vehicle, not the Lexus that had crashed. And so not only was it the wrong floor mat, but it had not been clamped down. So therefore it was installed improperly. So there were 2 things. It was the wrong floor mat, and it was not installed correctly. Even if it had been the right one, there would have been problems. So during the months following the crash, Toyota was frequently in the headline news, and not yet knowing the true cause of the crash. There were all kinds of assumptions made, and really a lot of it was not based in what actually happened. It was just speculation. And so during this time, it was permeating the media, but there was still no official word from Toyota. And so there was a lot of heightened angst regarding Toyota during this time because they were not responding to media, to the inquiries, to what happened, because the Toyota way dictates that they thoroughly investigate, and they were waiting for the police report to come out. And so while the police did their investigation, Toyota continued theirs as well. They ran tests, they sought solutions, but to emphasize the important point that they did not, the engineers and the leadership in Japan did not realize the firestorm really that was going on in the United States, and just hit after hit that Toyota was taking in the media and in the eyes of the public. So even after the accident report was released and the cause of the accident had been determined, there was still a lot of skepticism from the public and even customers that floor mats could have caused this wreck. And it was just easier to blame Toyota and to blame the safety issues with the car itself than it was, and technical problems. It was easier to blame Toyota than it would be to blame drivers, and especially the customers. It was a lot easier to blame technical problems than human error. So there began this theory in the media that the cause could have been electronic. And in the book, Toyota Under Fire, Leiker and Ogden go into a very detailed, long explanation as to why it could not have been an electronic cause. Separate from the issue of the floor mat and the sticky pedals, he goes into a very in-depth explanation, which I won't get into because I honestly didn't understand it all. But it was a very detailed explanation as to why that it could not have been an electronic. In addition to the speculation and all of this that was going on in the media, again, the hits just kept on coming to Toyota. And the time after the report had been released on the car crash, Toyota had been investigating a separate issue regarding sticky pedals, but not related to floor mats. There was another line of complaints about sticky pedals that had nothing to do with floor mats. So again, the gap in perception. Toyota motor sales in the United States were vehemently denying any problems, anything wrong inherently with the gas pedals. Meanwhile, in Japan, the engineers there were investigating an actual defect in the gas pedal itself, and they had been investigating this for a while. But the Toyota sales team in the United States, they were not aware that this investigation had been occurring. So looking back now, it's apparent that Toyota was not only falling short in communicating with the media, but there was also a severe internal communications problem as well. And again, this could possibly be due to the cultural differences between Japan and the United States, or just the culture of the Toyota industry as well. They began having to issue recalls for these sticky pedal issues, and it got so bad that Toyota ended up being called to testify before Congress because of these safety issues. Toyota engineers viewed the recall as a positive step, that they were putting customers first, they were putting customers ahead of profits. A recall is very costly for a car and a motor company. So the engineers and the leadership in Japan viewed this as a positive step, that they were putting customers ahead of the costs of what it would cost to do this recall. But the executives in the United States perceived this very differently, that it was just another hit against Toyota, and it just further eroded customers' trust in the company. And just the gap in perception was huge between what was being perceived in the United States and what was being perceived by engineers and leadership in Japan. It would have been wise to have a public relations professional working for Toyota, just available constantly to answer questions, to respond to every single media inquiry, just every single inquiry that they could, even maybe going as far as having a briefing room in one of the Toyota plants in the United States. That's just a thought that I had. But in the life cycle of a conflict, as defined by Wilcox, his book, the latest edition of Think Public Relations, was published, or the version that I have is 2011, so it's the 8th edition. The life cycle of a conflict is defined and discussed here. There are 4 phases of the life cycle of a conflict. The first phase is the proactive phase, then the strategic phase is second, third phase is reactive, and the fourth phase is the recovery phase. And during the first phase, it's proactive. So during this phase, the PR professional is scanning the environment just constantly to track any potential issues that could crop up. And then the planning of how to handle the issues needs to begin during this phase. The second phase is strategic planning. It involves the communication of risk and the relaying of any dangers or threats. And this goes back to an internal communications, the importance of internal communications, which was not present in the case of Toyota. Then the third phase is the reactive phase, which involves a great deal of crisis communication and responding to events as they unfold. So a quick response to any other issues that would crop up. So you're reacting at this point and kind of nipping it in the bud before a secondary issue can become a major crisis again. And then the conflict resolution needs to occur here, and it also may involve some litigation. It's just the solution to the issue needs to happen in the reactive phase, and that action needs to happen. And the last phase in the life cycle of a conflict is the recovery. And during the recovery phase, the PR professional works on reputation management and restoring the company's image. And there needs to be a lot of strategic decisions made there as well. So that process is obviously not how things were handled in the case of the Toyota recall. Like I said, it would have meant going against the Toyota way, but in handling it in their own way, it did become apparent to the leadership in Japan that the gap in perception was a large one, and the perception in the United States being so negative, they realized that they needed to take action. So even though it was so late in the game, they did make a decision to act. And the way they stepped up was by opening a line of communication, not only for questions and media inquiries, but this was a direct line of communication for their customers as well. So the Toyota call center was really the way that Toyota was first able to kind of begin to turn the tide. So their philosophy with this communication and the call center and reaching out to customers or allowing customers to reach out to them, this philosophy was threefold. To first accept responsibility, number two, to not blame the customers, suppliers, dealers, or anyone else, and above all, number three, put customers first. And that was their strategy in dealing with the aftermath of the recall and the customer concerns and any other issues that would come up. So to this day, Toyota has not abandoned their culture or the Toyota way. they did bounce back from the crisis. They overcame the speculation eventually by sticking with the facts and their dedication to quality and customer service. The call center was very crucial for them. It could have been a lot faster, however, if they had responded in a timely manner to media inquiries and to the public. So, but as Leiker and Ogden explains, Toyota, they focus more on getting to the root of the problem. That's where they focus all their efforts, and to spend all of their time, money, and efforts on quality and improvement, eliminating mistakes, and that kind of thing. But if they continue in the Toyota way, which they very may well do, it could mean it's just a harder fight in the long run by not being more proactive and being more transparent and upfront about the issues as they arise.